Daniel Thompson was a man who seemed to possess everything in the world: a thriving business empire, a lavish lifestyle, and respect from his peers. At 50 years old, he was one of the wealthiest individuals in the country, overseeing an empire so extensive that his name was synonymous with success. Yet, behind his charming smile and tailored suits, Daniel's life was empty. He was often alone, surrounded by riches but deprived of genuine companionship. His personal life was an endless cycle of fleeting relationships, with no one to return to after a long day at work. He would often ask himself in the privacy of his thoughts, "Is this all there is to life?" Daniel was a complex man, a brilliant leader but flawed in his personal dealings. He had 3 close friends: Michael, his longtime personal doctor who often doubled as his confidant; Robert, his loyal driver of over a decade; and David, his co-worker and someone he trusted with difficult decisions at the company. The 4 had an unbreakable bond, frequently gathering at their favorite hotel in the heart of Chicago to enjoy lively banter and unwind from life's stresses. It was a Friday evening, and the 4 friends sat at their usual table in the grand dining hall of the hotel. The atmosphere was relaxed, filled with the murmur of conversations and the soft clinking of cutlery. Daniel sipped his wine, his eyes scanning the room lazily. Michael, ever observant, leaned back in his chair and smirked. "Daniel, I think it's time we address the elephant in the room," Michael said, setting down his glass of whiskey. "What elephant?" Daniel replied, raising an eyebrow. Robert chuckled. "Come on, boss. You're 50 years old and still living like a bachelor. You switch women like you change cars." Daniel grinned but said nothing. David joined in, nudging Daniel playfully. "We all know you're a master businessman, Daniel. But what's the point of having all this money if you've got no one to share it with? Have you thought about settling down?" Daniel rolled his eyes. "Oh, not this again. Why does everyone keep pushing this marriage agenda on me?" "Because," Robert said, leaning forward, "you're not getting any younger. Look at yourself, boss. You've built an empire. And yet here you are dining with us instead of sharing this table with a wife." "I don't need anyone," Daniel replied, waving them off. "I'm perfectly fine on my own. Besides, how do you even know if someone really loves you? Most women just see me as a walking bank account." Michael sighed, his tone softening. "Maybe not all women are like that, Daniel. You just have to look for the right one, though." Daniel brushed off his friend's comments. Their words lingered in his mind as he drove home that night. His penthouse apartment was as grand as they came, a sprawling space with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the city skyline. But as he stepped inside, the silence was deafening. He poured himself a drink and stood by the window, staring out at the glittering city lights. "Maybe they're right," he thought, sipping his whiskey. "Maybe it's time I find someone." The next few weeks passed uneventfully, but the idea of settling down began to take root in Daniel's mind. He decided to make an effort, attending a few social events and mingling more than usual. That's when he met Sophia. Sophia was nothing like the women Daniel usually dated. She was graceful, intelligent, and had a warmth that drew people to her. They met at a charity gala, where Sophia was volunteering to help raise funds for underprivileged children. "Good evening, Daniel," he said, approaching her with his signature charm. Sophia looked up and smiled politely. "Good evening, I'm Sophia." "I'm Daniel Thompson," he introduced himself, extending a hand. "I know," Sophia said, shaking his hand. "You're hard to miss at an event like this." "I'm Daniel," he asked playfully, raising an eyebrow. "Sophia Lee." "No fancy titles like you." Sophia laughed softly. Daniel chuckled, impressed by her confidence. "What brings you here tonight?" "Sophia," he corrected. "I volunteer with the organization," she explained. "We're raising funds for a project to build schools in rural areas." Daniel was intrigued. He spent the rest of the evening talking to her, genuinely interested in her passion for helping others. By the end of the night, he felt a connection he hadn't felt in years. Daniel didn't waste any time. Over the next few weeks, he courted Sophia with a determination that surprised even himself. He took her out to elegant dinners, introduced her to his friends, and even attended some of her volunteering events, a stark departure from his usual routine. Robert was the first to notice the change. "Boss, you're smiling a lot these days," he teased one morning as he drove Daniel to work. "Am I?" Daniel replied, glancing at Robert through the rearview mirror. "Yes, and I think I know why. Isn't it Sophia?" Daniel didn't respond, but the faint smile on his face said it all. After several months of dating, Daniel decided to take the plunge. He proposed to Sophia in a private moment at his penthouse, with the city lights twinkling behind him. He knelt down on one knee and presented her with a diamond ring. "Sophia Lee," he said, his voice steady, "will you marry me?" Sophia was taken aback, tears welling up in her eyes. "Daniel, this is so unexpected. I know we haven't been together for long," Daniel admitted, "but I've never met anyone like you. You brought something into my life that I didn't even know I was missing. Will you do me the honor of being my wife?" Sophia smiled, nodding through her teary eyes. "Yes, Daniel, I'll marry you." The wedding was a grand affair, attended by the city's elite, as well as Sophia's close friends and family. But as the days turned into weeks, Daniel's old fears began to resurface. He couldn't shake the thought that Sophia might have married him for his wealth. Late one night, as Sophia slept beside him, Daniel stared at the ceiling, his mind racing. What if she's just putting on an act? What if she's only here because of the lifestyle I can provide? These doubts grew stronger with each passing day. Daniel decided he needed to find out the truth, no matter what it took. His doubts about Sophia's love for him grew each day, casting a shadow over their once peaceful life. Her care, affection, and dedication didn't seem enough to silence the voice in his head. Does she truly love me, or just my money? His late-night musings soon turned into a plan. One evening, after another long day at work, Daniel called his three closest friends, Michael, Robert, and David, to meet him at their usual spot, a quiet booth in the luxurious hotel lounge where they often gathered. When they arrived, Daniel appeared uncharacteristically tense. Robert poured him a glass of whiskey, sliding it across the table. "Boss, what's eating you today? You don't look yourself." Daniel leaned back, swirling the whiskey in his glass. He hesitated before speaking. "I need your help," he finally said, his tone serious. "And I need you to promise me you won't ask too many questions or try to stop me." The group exchanged curious glances. David, ever the skeptic, leaned forward. "What's this about, Daniel? You're making it sound like some top-secret mission." "It's about Sophia," Daniel said bluntly. "What about Sophia? Is everything okay between you two?" Michael raised an eyebrow. Daniel sighed. I don't know, Michael. I've been having these doubts, these nagging thoughts. What if she doesn't actually love me for who I am? What if she's only here because of the lifestyle I give her?" David frowned. "Daniel, she seems genuine. Why are you doing this to yourself?" "That's the thing," Daniel said. "I don't know. I can't just take her word for it. I need proof." He leaned forward, his voice almost a whisper. "And that's why I've called you all here. I've come up with a way to test her." Robert's face tightened. "Test her? What exactly do you mean by that?" Daniel straightened up in his chair, laying out his idea. "Michael, you're going to create fake medical records, something convincing. You'll call Sophia and tell her that I've been in a terrible car accident and that my injuries are life-altering. Tell her I'll never walk again." Michael's eyes widened. "You can't be serious. Do you understand how cruel this is, Daniel? Sophia has been nothing but kind to you. I need to know," Daniel insisted. "If she truly loves me, she won't care about my condition. She'll stay by my side no matter what." "And what about me?" Robert asked, crossing his arms. "You'll play along?" Daniel replied. "You're going to be the one driving me home from the hospital and helping sell the story. She can't suspect anything. David shook his head in disbelief. Daniel, this is insane. You're risking your marriage just to satisfy your insecurities. Daniel said firmly, I need to do this. If Sophia's love is real, then this won't change anything. But if it isn't, I deserve to know the truth. After a long silence, Michael reluctantly agreed. Fine, I'll do it. But you owe her an explanation when this is over. The next morning, Michael made the call. Sophia picked up on the first ring, her cheerful voice turning to panic as Michael delivered the fabricated news. Mrs. Lee, this is Dr. Michael. I'm afraid I have some terrible news. Daniel was involved in a serious car accident. He's in critical condition at the hospital. You need to come right away. Sophia gasped, her heart racing. Oh my God! What happened? Is he going to be okay? Michael hesitated, playing his role. We're doing everything we can, but it doesn't look good. Sophia wasted no time. She rushed to the hospital, tears streaming down her face. When she arrived, she found Daniel lying in a hospital bed, his face pale and his legs covered in heavy bandages. Daniel, she cried, rushing to his side. Daniel looked up at her with faint weakness. Sophia, I'm sorry. Tears filled her eyes as she grasped his hand. Why are you apologizing? None of this is your fault. What matters is that you're alive. I'm here, and I'll take care of you. Michael entered the room, his expression solemn. Mrs. Lee, I'm afraid I have to prepare you for the worst. Due to the severity of his injuries, Daniel will never walk again. We've done all we can. Sophia's breath hitched, but she didn't hesitate. Then we'll adapt. I'll do whatever it takes to make sure he's comfortable and happy. Michael's stomach churned with guilt as she turned to Daniel, her expression filled with determination. You're my husband, Daniel. I'll never abandon you. The next day, Michael discharged Daniel, handing him off to Robert. Sophia pushed Daniel's wheelchair to the car and carefully helped him in. She smiled at him despite her tear-streaked face. Don't worry, love, she said softly. We'll get through this together. Back at home, Sophia became a picture of devotion. She cooked Daniel's favorite meals, washed his clothes, and rearranged their home to make it easier for him to move around in his wheelchair. Every time Daniel watched her, he felt a pang of guilt. She was everything he could have asked for and more. One evening, as they sat in the living room, Sophia turned to him. Daniel, she began, do you remember our wedding vows? I promised to love you in sickness and in health. That promise wasn't just for the good times. It's for times like this, too. Daniel's throat tightened. He nodded but said nothing, his guilt building as the days turned into weeks. 2 months later, Daniel even sat with his friends at their usual hotel. His voice was heavy as he spoke. She's passed every test I've thrown at her. I admit, she takes care of me like nothing's changed. I think maybe I've been wrong about her all along. David leaned back in his chair, a satisfied look on his face. Told you, Daniel. Not every woman is out for your money. Robert nodded in agreement. She loves you, boss. That's clear as day. But Michael wasn't so quick to celebrate. If you think this test was enough, Daniel, you need to tell her the truth. She deserves to know. Daniel sighed, knowing Michael was right. But just as he was starting to accept Sophia's love, David had another suggestion, a second test. What if we take this a step further? David asked, a mischievous glint in his eye. Daniel looked at him curiously. What do you have in mind? David leaned forward, his voice low. We'll see if she's truly faithful. Let's hire someone to test her loyalty, someone she doesn't know. If she rejects him, then you'll know for sure. Part of Daniel felt it was unnecessary, but the insecurities buried deep in his heart whispered otherwise. All right, he said finally, let them do it. And so, the wheels for the next test were set in motion. Daniel had begun to feel a sense of comfort with Sophia's devotion after the accident. Yet David's suggestion to put Sophia through another test reignited the embers of doubt in his heart. If Sophia's love was genuine, he reasoned, This test would prove her loyalty beyond any doubt. The plan was simple yet calculated. David proposed hiring a man known for his irresistible charm, a professional womanizer named Jason. Jason had a reputation for making women fall for him in mere days, no matter how loyal or committed they were. If Sophia stayed faithful, Daniel promised himself he would trust her completely and put his insecurities to rest. "Are you sure this is necessary?" David asked one evening as they sat in their usual corner of the lounge. "David," Daniel corrected, "you said you wanted to know for sure, didn't you? Jason's a guy for the job. If Sophia doesn't fall for his tricks, then there's nothing left for you to doubt." Robert frowned, hesitant. "This feels wrong. Sophia has proven herself. Why do you have to keep testing her?" Daniel didn't answer immediately. He looked down at his glass of whiskey, then muttered, "Because I have to know if she's the one. I need to be sure." David pulled out his phone. "I'll set it up. Jason will accidentally bump into her at one of the places she volunteers. From there, we'll see how she reacts." It was a breezy afternoon when Sophia first encountered Jason. She was sorting through boxes of donated clothes at the community center when a tall, striking man with an easy smile strolled up to her. "Excuse me, miss," he began, his voice smooth and confident. "Do you work here?" Sophia looked up, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. "I volunteer here." "Yes. How can I help you?" Jason flashed a disarming grin. "I'm donating some items, but honestly, I'm impressed by what you're doing here. It's not every day you see someone giving so much of their time and energy to others." Sophia smiled politely. "It's no big deal, really. Just trying to help where I can." For the next few minutes, Jason lingered, asking her questions about her work and casually weaving in personal comments. "You must have a good heart," he remarked, leaning slightly closer. "Not many people would dedicate themselves like this." Sophia thanked him, but kept the conversation professional. Over the next few days, Jason showed up at the community center more often, at first under the guise of donating or asking about volunteer opportunities. But as time went on, his intentions became clearer. One afternoon, he found Sophia on her lunch break, sitting on a bench outside. He approached her with 2 cups of coffee. "I thought you could use a break," he said, handing her one of the cups. Sophia hesitated before accepting it. "That's very kind of you. Thank you." As they talked, he began subtly steering the conversation toward more personal topics. "So, do you do this full-time, or do you have a family to take care of?" Sophia smiled and held up her hand, showing her wedding ring. "I'm married. Actually, my husband's name is Daniel." Jason's smile didn't falter. "Lucky guy," he said smoothly. "Still, I bet you don't get much time for yourself. You're always taking care of others, aren't you?" Sophia laughed lightly. "I'm happy with my life. My husband supports me in everything I do, and that's all I need." Undeterred, Jason continued to lay his charm on thick. Over the coming week, from compliments to offering to help her with her work, he did everything he could to win her over. But Sophia never wavered. Each time he pushed the boundaries, she shut him down gently but firmly. "Jason," she said one evening after he had made another subtle attempt to ask her out, "I appreciate your kindness, but I'm happily married. Please respect that." By the end of the week, Jason knew his task was a failure. Not because he lacked skill, but because Sophia was unwavering in her love for Daniel. He met with Daniel at their usual lounge, delivering his report. "She's a good one, Daniel," Jason said, shaking his head. "She wouldn't budge. I tried everything. Compliments, sympathy, even playing the 'I need emotional support' card, but she wouldn't give me the time of day." Daniel sat in stunned silence, his heart feeling both heavy with guilt and light with relief. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Positive. That woman loves you." "If she didn't, I'd have known by now," Jason said confidently. David clapped Daniel on the back, grinning. "See? I told you she's a real deal. You don't need to doubt her anymore." Robert, who had been silent for most of the meeting, finally spoke. Now the only question is, how are you going to make it up to her? Daniel woke the next morning before Sophia. He went to the kitchen and made a tray of her favorite breakfast: fresh tea, buttery croissants, and fruit. It wasn't something he'd ever done before, but he knew he needed to show her how much she meant to him. Carrying the tray to the bedroom, he gently set it down on the nightstand and touched Sophia's shoulder. "Good morning, love," he said softly. Sophia stirred, opening her eyes slowly. "Daniel, what's all this?" Daniel sat down beside her, taking her hand in his. "It's an apology." Sophia looked at him in confusion. "For what?" Daniel took a deep breath. "Sophia, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you a long time ago." He explained everything: his doubts, the fake accident, and even the man he had hired to test her. As he spoke, Sophia listened in silence, her expression unreadable. When he finished, Daniel looked at her nervously. "I was wrong to doubt you. You've been nothing but loyal and loving, and I didn't trust that. I'm so sorry. Can you forgive me?" Sophia was silent for a moment, then let out a small laugh. "You really went through all that trouble just to see if I love you?" Daniel looked away, ashamed. "Yes." Sophia reached out and cued his face to turn to look at her. "Daniel, I married you because I love you, not your money, not your status. You didn't have to go to such lengths to find that out." Tears pricked Daniel's eyes as he nodded. "I know that now, and I promise I'll never doubt you again." Sophia smiled, wiping away a tear from his cheek. "Good. Now let's eat this breakfast before it gets cold." From that day forward, Daniel and Sophia's relationship grew stronger. Daniel learned to trust Sophia fully, and his friends marveled at the transformation. "Turns out love really does conquer all, huh?" David joked at their next gathering. Robert smiled. "About time." The boss saw the light. Daniel laughed, raising his glass. "Here's to Sophia, the woman who proved me wrong and showed me what love really is." They all toasted. And for the first time in years, Daniel felt a peace he hadn't known before, a peace rooted in trust, love, and the certainty that he had found someone who truly cared for him.